Time to pull apart Origin selection. It's going to be fascinating counting down to game one. Both sides with questions to answer and a few little injuries. Of course, New South Wales defending their victory from last year. Does that make them slightly more conservative? Do Queensland roll the dice under Billy Slater? We'll pull all of that apart. Scott Pryde, the man across all of it. Nice to be talking to you this morning.
It is indeed, Darren. We love a State of Origin period. It's a very, very busy time of year, but a great time of year for rugby league fans. 3 extra games on Wednesday nights. How good's that? Billy Slater with plenty of questions to answer, of course, after Queensland fell apart in that series decider at home last year, their first loss in a series decider at home for 20 years, and the Blues under new guidance. Laurie Daly takes over from Michael Maguire. Will he want to put his own stamp on the team? Plenty of questions to answer. We're about to pick it all apart, and I'm really looking forward to when these teams get named Sunday night, Monday morning. It's always an intriguing time of year.
Starting off with the Blues, does the coaching change, as you say, lead to some selection changes, or do they go with the formula that got the job done for them last year? We'll start at fullback. Dylan Edwards is the incumbent. His form has probably mirrored Penrith's to a degree this year, but obviously has got the job done for them in the past. Or do they go with James Tedesco or the late bolter Ryan Pappenhausen, who's in amazing form for the Storm, or even somewhere else?
Certainly some big questions to answer at fullback. Dylan Edwards certainly comes in as the incumbent, and has he done anything to lose his jersey? Probably not. But has he done enough to retain it? You could also argue probably not. James Tedesco, for mine, is one of the form fullbacks of the competition. He has plenty of try involvements across the 9 games he's played so far, and has the experience at Origin level. The big question that Laurie Daly will have to answer is whether it's actually worth taking 2 steps backwards to bring Tedesco into the side again. Again, I think Edwards will probably get selected, and that's the way I'm going. Ryan Pappenhausen's a late bolter. He had 4 tries on the weekend against the Tigers and has been phenomenal for Melbourne, but I'm going to stick with Dylan Edwards again, if I was picking the team, I probably wouldn't, but I think he'll be there.
Looking at the wing role, we did ask that question around fullbacks quite extensively during Magic Round, and it was probably split down the middle between Dylan and Tedesco, who did play a blinder that particular week, and then another one through the last couple of days. But Brian Tuo, Jacob Carraz, how much will injuries play into selection there? And speaking of injuries, obviously Zach Lomax yet to return. Any chance at all that he gets selected?
I don't think so. He's been out for 6 weeks. There's some talk that he's going to play round 11. Of course, we're filming this prior to team lists being named this weekend, but I can't see Zach Lomax being selected for the Blues, even if he does play for Parramatta this weekend. Brian To'o's a walk-up starter. He's been a little bit down on form himself. Like you said, with Edwards, really, the rest of the Panthers have struggled a bit, but he's still averaging almost 190 metres a game. That's the role he's picked for. I think he'll be there. I'm going Jacob Carraz on the other wing. I think he's done enough to earn his spot over the last 18 months. He himself had an injury earlier this year, of course, and missed a bit of time, but has come back in fine form, scoring tries and running huge metres. I think 188 a game it is. The only other player that you could maybe slot in there for a bit of X factor is Tom Trbojevic, but again, I think he's far too injury prone to risk throwing to the Wolves at this stage.
Yeah, given they don't necessarily need to take those risks. If we look at the centres, one half of that fairly obvious. Steve Crichton's been incredible. If he is an automatic lock, who do they go for the other?
Yeah, you're right. Steve Crichton, I think he's a future Blues captain, and I've said that on record previously, so he'll be there. Braden Best is the incumbent, but I think he's going to be probably the most unlucky player in the state come Monday morning. I think Latrell Mitchell is basically, he has to be selected. He brings so much X factor to that team. You saw it for South Sydney on Friday night against Brisbane. He kicked that 48-metre field goal, but he does so much more than that in his game, and he just has too much upside to overlook, essentially. Latrell for me.
Jumping into the halves, this has been one where some people say it's obvious, some people say it isn't. If it is obvious, is it Mitchell Moses and Nathan Cleary? Obviously, Moses, we did discuss it a little bit through the week on another podcast that his form, or at least that of his teams, if you put that under scrutiny, might bring that into jeopardy. But how do you see this?
Well, it's a tricky one for Laurie Daly, I think, and one of the toughest selection calls he's going to have to make, because he's picking between a halfback who is in the last or the bottom ranked side in the competition. He's got Mitchell Moses, who guided the Blues to that series win at Suncorp last year, but again, has been injured, and Parramatta are right down the wrong end of the table. And Jerome Luai, who, he brings a specialist 5'8" to the mix, but his form hasn't exactly been setting the world on fire since his move to the Tigers. So there's real intrigue around which way Daly's going to go. I think he has to recall Nathan Cleary. He's a four-time premiership winner, and he's been heavily involved in 2 or 3 of those grand finals. One of them, you could argue, he won off his own bat. So he's a big game player. He has to be there. Who partners him is up for dispute. Jerome Luai brings the advantage of being in a combination. They've played right through the junior ranks at Penrith. It's a point Lee Addison made yesterday on the loose carry that they do have that combination and history together. But for me, you can't drop Mitchell Moses. He was just so good in Game 3 last year. Yes, Parramatta have only won 1 out of 3 since he came back, but I think that's down more to his teammates than it is him. So for me, it's Moses and Cleary.
If they're writing the team on a whiteboard with a whiteboard marker, do they switch to the permanent marker with Reece Robson in the hooker role and then just move on, or do they give that much thought beyond that?
No real discussion required here. Interestingly enough, I think if Reece Robson didn't play last year and do such a good job, I think Wade Egan would be banging down the door for that number 9 jersey. He's been phenomenal at the Warriors, but given Reece Robson's the incumbent and has done nothing to lose his jersey, he's going to be there. End of story. Let's move on.
Looking at the props, I guess a 2-part question. You're settled 2 for that role, and within that 2 or beyond, is there any room for Jake Trbojevic?
Not really. I think Jake Trbojevic, he's obviously a leader and inspiration to his Manly teammates. And if you listen to the Blues camp last year, did similar in that environment. But I don't think you can take Jake Trbojevic into an Origin series this year. He played limited minutes last year, and he hasn't done enough at Manly, in my view, to retain his jumper. So he's out. Payne Haas is an obvious walk-up selection. One of the first players picked in this Blues team every year, no doubt about it. I'm going Terrell May for my other spot. He's been in phenomenal form for the West Tigers, albeit a little bit quieter on the weekend against Manly when they got belted 64-0. But he still got through plenty of minutes, did plenty of work in defence, and tried to flip the game once or twice. So he's primed for an Origin debut. Obviously, Mitch Barnett's the other prop in the mix there, but to me, he's going to be in the team, just not starting.
Yeah, those numbers for Payne Haas, 180 metres per game, 60 tackle busts, 31 offloads. He's putting his hand up in a very significant manner. We look at the second row. This is an interesting question that can probably be asked about a lot of positions. Form or reputation do you go with?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? If you look at the incumbents from last year, you'd have Liam Martin and Angus Crichton there. Both of them are playing solid enough football without setting the world on fire. Unfortunately for those 2 guys, there are 2 other guys who are setting the world on fire, and certainly Hudson Young from the Canberra Raiders he's got a little bit of Origin experience under his belt, but has probably been one of the informed players in the competition, and certainly probably the second rower of the year so far. So I think he has to start the game for his impact and the way he's been able to find the try line in particular. I think he's got 7 tries already to his name, which is phenomenal areas for a forward. I think he'll be joined in the starting side by Homola Kauatu from the Manly Sea Eagles. He's again, he just brings so much intensity to the game, especially in attack there with his ball running. He's so hard to tackle. His frame makes him borderline impossible to tackle at times, as club teams have found out throughout the year. I think there's still room for Martin and Crichton in this side, but we'll get to that in a minute.
In terms of the lock roll, is this something they can't help but downgrade in a minor way on last year?
Yeah, unfortunately for the Blues, Cam Murray's the best lock in the competition. I've been on record on multiple platforms saying that previously. His play the ball speed, his ability to keep the ball alive, his ability to read the game, his defence, he just brings it all, Cam Murray. And when he went down with his Achilles injury before the season started, I said to a few mates, I think that's the biggest blow the Blues will have at any point this year. So him out is obviously a massive issue. Isaiah Yeo has plenty of Origin experience, but I don't think he's suited to the lock forward role in State of Origin. He runs the ball hard and tackles hard, and I thought his best Origin game actually came off the bench last year when he was used more as a prop. So the Blues are going to be missing that crucial link man in the middle. He does have the advantage of playing alongside Nathan Cleary and Dylan Edwards, which is, it helps certainly, but I think it's an advantage for Queensland and a downgrade for the Blues that they have to pick Yeo, but they certainly will because there's no other options.
Looking at the all-important bench flexibility, with two-part question, with the utility role, is it automatically Connor Watson, or is this somewhere where maybe Pappenhausen bursts into contention and lands a role in that spot? And then which forwards do you think they settle on to make the cut here?
Well, it's the utility role. Let's start there. It's extremely interesting, this one. Big lack of words there, but Connor Watson certainly brings the ability to play virtually every position across the field, which is a massive boost to the team. And I think you can't go past him. But intriguingly, Laurie Daly actually said on Sky Sports Radio yesterday morning that he can see a role for Ryan Pappenhausen in the team somewhere. I can't personally justify picking two sort of utility options, albeit Connor Watson could be used as a specialist forward. But Pappenhausen certainly has made his case with his form at Melbourne. I think he could be 18th man. I really do. I think he's very, very close to the team without being in it. Connor Watson, as I said, I think he has to be picked. His form for the Roosters has been outstanding. He didn't let anyone down last year, so he gets picked. And then the forwards, you've got to obviously go three specialist forwards. I'm going Mitch Barnett as your specialist prop. I think he brings aggression. He brings the ability to play big minutes and a bit of versatility to that forward pack. Angus Crichton, I think, has to be there based on his previous form. And then for mine, the last spot comes down to, do you pick a specialist prop like a Spencer Leniu, or do you go with someone who can play both middle and edge like Liam Martin? And I think for mine, Martin wins that race. Leniu's form simply hasn't been good enough. I don't think there's any other specialist props putting their hand up and saying, pick me, pick me. And for that reason, I think you go Martin. As I said, he can play middle and edge, which brings a bit of versatility. The only other name I sort of thought about last night was Keon Koloamatangi, but I think Martin wins the race for mine.
So we'll have the full predicted 17 online. Obviously, you won't have to wait too long to find out what that's going to look like in reality. But we cross to Queensland, who started the series so impressively and then lost control of it in a major way from that point on. Do they look at it and think, well, our best was good enough, we just lost track of it? Or do we need to make some significant changes? Billy Slater will be pondering that, obviously, with his wealth of experience. But starting off in the fullback role, Reece Walsh's injuries creates a bit of a dilemma. Is it as easy as Kalen Ponga in or not?
I'm going to say no. This is easily my biggest call across the two sides. I don't know if Billy Slater has the gumption to make this move. I don't know if he'll take the risk, but to me, I don't think you can overlook the hammer at fullback. He's been phenomenal for the Dolphins, and you only need to look at the statistical difference. And yes, I know Kalen Ponga's playing in a Newcastle side that's been struggling. Hannah's Dolphins have been going slightly better, but for me, you do need to look at the statistics of this, and the Hammer has 7 tries, 3 assists. He's running 166 metres a game, and he's made 50 tackle busts compared to Ponga, who has no tries. He has made a few more assists with 6, down on metres at 150 and only 26 tackle busts. I think the biggest stat here, though, is the errors. Ponga's made 19, Hammer's only made 5. They've both played 10 games. So on the stats alone, you lean towards Hammer. I think the big question that Billy Slater's going to have to answer is where he actually would prefer Hammer to play and whether he wants to mess with his back 5, because if he decides he wants Hammer in the centres, which, again, he's a phenomenal centre, then Ponga gets picked. But for mine, I think that the team balances out better with the Hammer at fullback.
If Billy Slater is thinking about changes, is the wings an area where he's not, where he might sort of rubber stamp that, think, well, if I need to adjust things, it's somewhere else?
Yeah, I think the wings are pretty much walk up and pick themselves. Xavier Coates and Murray Taulagi, both in phenomenal form. They've both got 7 tries in 9 games, both running the ball strongly. I think the only question here will be is if Billy Slater does go with Ponga at fullback, whether he wants Selwyn Cobbo on the wing. But for me, Cobbo plays elsewhere. We'll get to that in just a tick.
Well, yeah, with the Hammer decision within this lineup going to the back, looking at the centres, obviously Valentine Holmes hasn't been sensational this season, but does have a little bit of experience, and Cobbo, who you mentioned, really lets Queensland down.
Yeah, well, Holmes has heaps of experience, and for that reason alone, he has to be there. Whether that continues next year when blokes like Jackson Purdue start to push for a spot remains to be seen. But at the moment, I think you have to pick Holmes in the centres. His goal kicking is also so important to the Queensland team. So he's one of the first picked, and I do have Selwyn Cobbo in that other centre spot with the hammer at fullback. Cobbo played centre for the Broncos last year with varying levels of success, but he seems to have turned a corner this year in his game style, whether that be at wing or fullback. He's been one of the better players for Brisbane across the first 10 weeks of the competition, averaging almost 150 metres a game. And I think I've made the point very clear previously that your back five need to run the football in Origin. It creates so much pressure for an opposition forward pack if they're constantly on the back foot. And I think, I only look back to that 2021 series where the Blues had, I think all five of their back five averaged 200 metres a game throughout the series, and Queensland never stood a chance. So I think the metres are a big thing. Cobbo has improved his game in the last sort of a couple of months, and I think he's worthy of a spot.
In the halves now, the question or the thing that keeps getting said is don't sleep on Tom Dearden. We imagine he's in the squad, but does he start on the park, or do they go with perhaps the slightly more tried and true?
Oh, I think coming off last year's series loss, the Maroons have to go with the tried and true. It's going to be Cameron Munster and Daly Cherry Evans. Munster in particular hasn't really put a foot wrong this year. He's, what is he? He's up to 11 try assists in 9 games, which is pretty phenomenal areas. They're in Melbourne. So Munster, for mine, wins the 6 ahead of Tom Dearden. Not to say Tom Dearden's been in bad form, but his time will come as a permanent starting half in the Origin arena. I think Daly Cherry Evans' form is a worry, though. The biggest thing for Queensland is they don't really have another halfback. Neither Munster or Dearden are going to play the number 7. So, for me, it's Munster and Cherry Evans.
In the hooker role, Harry Grant back this week after his injury layoff. Is it as simple as that? Does he need to show a certain amount of fitness or form to be a walk-up starter, or is it a lock?
Look, he probably needs to show something, but not much. He's that far ahead of the competition. It's not funny. He's the best dummy half in the NRL by a country mile. Reid Marnie's the closest competition, so that probably tells you all you need to know there. As long as Grant gets through the game unscathed, he'll be picked in that squad Monday morning.
In terms of the props, Lindsay Collins out injured, so how did Queensland line up in that role?
Yeah, look, I think Queensland have got 3 pretty clear-cut starting middle forwards, being, their 2 props and their lock. Which order Billy Slater actually chooses to name them in, up for dispute, but I think you've got Tino Fa'asuamaleaui, Reuben Cotter, and Patrick Carrigan. For me, I'm playing Carrigan at lock. I think he's a phenomenal lock forward, and we'll get to that in a tick, but I think Tino and Reuben Cotter at prop, personally, I think they both get through a stack of work and are really cut out for the first 20 minutes of an Origin game. So yeah, it's Tino and Reuben for me.
Second row, Jaden Stewart dropped for game 3 last year. They obviously didn't get the result in terms of the game. Does he come straight back in, and is it another returning forward maybe that partners him on the edge?
Yeah, I think Tom Gilbert is sort of the first picked second rower for Queensland. He's got Origin written all over him. He's obviously missed a heap of time in the last 18 months with firstly that shoulder injury he sustained in the 2023 series and then his ACL before the 2024 season. So he comes straight back into the second row. I do think Jaden Stewart gets a recall as well. He's averaging 131 metres per game, defending at almost 93%, and he's made 19 offloads this year. So I think he comes straight in. I think the big question that Billy Slater will have to answer is just who else he plays as a second rower in a side. I think Beau Fernor's form has been very good for the Titans, but he certainly misses out on the starting side, and we'll get to the bench shortly.
In terms of the lock, is that a lock? Is that one of their easiest? If we look at numbers purely without giving the name, 14 offloads, 11 tackle breaks, 181 metres. Is this an easy pick?
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned it, didn't I, that Queensland have got 3 pretty clear-cut starting middle forwards. Any of the 3 could play lock, I think, Tino, Reuben or Patrick Carrigan. But for me, Carrigan's the best option at lock. Yes, he's playing prop for Brisbane this year, but, as you just ran through his numbers there, he's been in phenomenal form and he'll play big minutes in that 13 jumper for the Maroons this year.
Looking at the crucial minutes that are going to come off the interchange bench, Ponga not selected at fullback in your side. Does that mean he takes 14, or have you gone elsewhere?
Well, I think this is one of the trickier selections, and it may not wind up being if Ponga does get picked at fullback. But for me, again, I've got the hammer at fullback, so it does mean Ponga gets considered for this bench role. He's done it before. He did rip the Blues in half a couple of years ago. If you remember, he came off the bench and basically flipped the game. But then there's the counterpoint of that, where in Game 3 last year, he actually overplayed his hand and he was far too easy to shut down for the Blues. He needed to flip that game when he came on and couldn't find a way to do so. The big issue there being you're seeing similar in the way he's playing at Newcastle this year, where he's overplaying his hand again, and opposition club level teams are being able to shut him down quite comfortably. So I'm going a different route. I'm going Tom Dearden. I think he's unlucky to miss the starting team, and he's a future Queensland player. I think Dearden has the size and the ability to really make it sing around the ruck against tired forwards at the end of each half. So for me, Dearden is picked as the utility, predominantly to play a roving role around the ruck there. Potentially he can slot in at dummy half, and obviously if there's an injury in the back line, he'll get big minutes if that is the case.
Where have you landed on your forwards for the final three spots?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of pretty easy selections here, and one trickier one. Corey Horsburgh and Mo Fotuaika have been the two easy ones. I think they add a heap of size and a heap of aggression to the middle for Queensland. Horsburgh has really earned his spot, 133 metres a game and almost 95% in defence. Fotuaika's another huge body that you add there. He's tackling at almost 97%. And what you're going to see there is really strong defence through the middle of the game for Queensland. So I think those two are walk-up starters. Defence is probably the question mark around the third bench player or the fourth bench player that I've picked, being Jeremiah Nanai. I think he brings too much X factor in attack to be overlooked. So I think that's the big consideration there. You can't overlook Jeremiah Nanai because of the way he's able to score tries, because of how good he is in the air, because of his line running. But his defence is a major question mark for mine. It did bring Bo Thermal into the mix. He's been very, very good for the Gold Coast Titans. But ultimately, I think he just misses out, and Billy Slater has to pick Nanai just from that attacking point of view.
We're going to see those two suggested 17s for New South Wales and Queensland for the hotly anticipated opening game, which it is going to be fascinating to see which way some of those perhaps 50-50s fall. But let us know on our socials how we've gone. Head along to Zero Tackle. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us your comments, thoughts, suggested selection falters or locks within that team. But thanks for tuning in. And Scott, it's Christmas for rugby league fans.